let's settle in. So as you allow your eyes to close or your gaze to soften, just pause. Just pause the activity, pause the movement, and just really give yourself permission just to be here for these few minutes. There's this beautiful ritual to our meditation practice where this reminder comes, we respond, we show up, and then we, on purpose, let everything slow down. Wouldn't it be amazing if this could happen in our life several times a day? We'd get this reminder in our heart, where our spirit would have this little prick or this little nudge that says, pause, slow down. And with that idea, we start to realize this practice doesn't just teach us about peace and about stillness in our mind. It truly teaches us how to slow down. And so just begin to settle into a good rhythm of breath. Just allowing yourself to expand on that inhale and fully release on that exhale. And just notice as you find that rhythm of breath, just notice how you feel. Notice if the busyness persists or if it too begins to just slow down. We're going to continue our journey of looking at peace. In Sanskrit, we call that Shanti. But this idea of this incredible concept that we think is something that we want to try to attain, but we learn through time that it really is just this way of being. And so I thought of this story earlier today that just fits so well because we've looked at peace from all these angles of how we wake up and how we see the world and our interactions and the things that we think about. But I thought today, what about the places that we go? The actual physical places that we go each day. So if I were to ask you just to kind of make a list over the last few days where all you had been, some things are compulsory. You had to go to work, you had to go to school, you had to take care of your kids or whatever your obligations are. And then there are these places that we go because we need something or we want something. Then there are places that we sometimes go that we really didn't choose, but there's a necessity or there's something going on that's causing us to end up there. And wouldn't it be amazing if every place that we found ourselves was this environment of peace? You know, we try to cultivate that here in meditation. We try to create this space, this physical spot where we are seated, where there's just this intention of peace. But we know that as we travel throughout the day and throughout the world, more often than not, what we're finding is these environments where we end up are not places of peace. And so I thought of this story today of this young school teacher. And there's always this kind of urban legend that when you go into the teacher's lounge in a school, that's where all the good gossip is. It's where all the conversation happens. And this young teacher had heard that through the years, but here she went. She had a break in her day and she just wanted to sit down and just rest and be away from the responsibilities of teaching for just a little bit. She found herself in this teacher's lounge. She loved teaching. She loved her students. It was hard work, but she loved it. And she arrives in this teacher's lounge and there's other educators there, different levels of experience, different things that they were all teaching. And she quickly found that the urban legend was really quite true. That there was something about entering this physical space of this lounge area where people just felt this overwhelming need to complain, to focus on the negative. sometimes to say really harmful and hurtful things. And what this young teacher realized very quickly is it was really easy to fall into that trap with them, to kind of jump on this bandwagon of negativity and talk about the broken things and the challenges that were all the fault of someone else. And very quickly, her joy about her job began to fade away. All because of the time that she spent in this environment where there was no peace. And I will tell you that that young teacher was me. And I quickly decided that in order to keep the peace and the contentment and the joy that I felt about this beautiful honor of teaching someone else's children, I had to ensure that the places I went during my day nurtured that instead of distracting from it. And this is not to blame educators for getting frustrated and feeling like they need a place to vent or to release. But it's just this lesson that I learned at a very early part of my career, that where I go really does influence how I am. Where I spend my time really does impact the state of my heart. And if I want to be this person who lives out this life of peace, I've got to be in places that nurture that instead of taking away from it. Now, I get that we all go to hard places in our day. We go places that are challenging. We drive in traffic where people are impatient and a little bit selfish. And so there are some places we have to travel in our day where we don't always have a lot of control over whether we go there or not. We just kind of find ourselves there. But what I'd like us to each do is just think about the places that you go and how much of those environments that you're choosing to be in cultivate and nurture and nourish the peace that you try to foster right here in meditation. And then which of those places take away from it? And are you ready to make some different choices in your life about where you go? I can't imagine if I had kept persisting in this unpeaceful environment in those formative years of my career. I can't imagine that I would have made it 30 years like I did. I have a feeling that my joy would have been robbed very early. And I don't know what would have happened. But I made a hard choice that I wouldn't spend my time there. I wanted to be a place that would nourish me. The places that would cultivate more joy, not take away from it. And because of that, I can look back on 30 years of kids' lives that I touched and I helped to form, and adults that I was able to coach. But had I not made a tough decision decades ago, the end might have been a little different. So I would ask each of us, of the places that we're each choosing to go, not the traffic, not the workplace that you must go to, but those places that you make a choice to enter. Do they cultivate your peace and deepen it to a level that really honors what this practice is trying to do? Or are they taken away from it? I think about my entertainment choices and how they've shifted over the years, of how I didn't always have a lot of standards about the mindless things that I would just watch on the screen. And now I'm so careful about how I feel when things enter my eyes and my mind and my soul. And I've kind of given myself permission to feel if something doesn't sit right. And when I feel those ways, I move away from whatever it was, which could mean I turn off the TV or I close the social media feed or whatever it is. But every day I'm making these choices. I didn't just make a choice 30 years ago and I had it all figured out for how to be peaceful. Every day it's a choice. It's the things that I want to engage in, and it's the things that I choose to stay away from. And it may sound like a limited way of living, but what I'm finding is that the freedom that comes from consciously nurturing this peace that I want so much to live out, the freedom is indescribable. The colors around me just feel like they are richer and more vibrant. The textures that I engage with in the world just feel so much more rich. The sounds of nature are magical. And it's helped me to go through the world in a really different way. But it means that I take this practice, this here and now of meditation, and I got to kind of grapple with this idea of how do I live it out in all the other minutes, in the places that I go and in the places that I stay away from. And so I'd like us just to each pause and just be open to whatever comes across your mind. Maybe it'll be pictures of your daily travels, of the places where you go and the things that you fill your time with, and the images that come across your eyes and the things that you hear in your ears. And as those things come across your awareness, see if you can feel something like I've kind of given myself permission to. Do you feel good and at ease when you think of those things? Or do you feel a little disequilibrium, a little unsteady, a little uncomfortable? And it doesn't mean that as we rise up from this spot in the next few minutes that we'll all just change the course of our day and change where we go. But it does mean that we'll be a little more aware of the choices that we're making. And you'll find that as you start to make some of those choices like I did so many years ago, the next choice doesn't seem as hard. The next choice doesn't seem as uncomfortable. And so let's just each pause and continue to breathe and just continue to see all the places where you travel in your day and your week. Which ones cultivate and nurture the sense of peace that we're trying so hard here to discover? And which ones take away from it? And as you continue to breathe and just be aware of what's coming across your mind's eye, There's so many different ways that we can meditate, that we can find the present moment. But I think one of the greatest gifts is whenever we're able to sit and think about this meditation practice in terms of our reality. How do I live this out there? And so each time something comes across our scope of our awareness while we're sitting here, it just makes us a little more aware once we get out there. And then all of a sudden you don't really see your life as these things that you can't or you shouldn't do. You start to see the opposite. You see the potential of what you can do. You see the potential of what you choose to do because of the choices that you make. I would love to sit here in meditation with each of us and just hope and manifest and pray for a world that is peaceful in all the spaces. But I think the most realistic way for us right now, just with the state of things as they are, is to begin to look at the places where we go, understanding the places that don't nurture that peace, and then decide to do something a little different. And then maybe once we work with that a bit more, then our peace will be such a default way of living and being that maybe we'll find that we can be in those spaces and be the influencer of that energy. We can be the ones having the impact on the environment. But I think we start with this idea of making some choices for ourselves. Be in the places that cultivate and nurture the way that you want to live, the peace that you want to experience in every moment of your life. Let's take this meditation practice off this physical cushion, this metaphorical cushion, this spot where you are, and let's let it inform and guide and inspire all the rest of the parts. Namaste.